Hey everyone, it's John from the Daily Downforce, your favorite social media and content creator dude. NASCAR video games, you either love them, hate them, or really hate them. To say they've gone through quite an arc over the last 2 decades would be an understatement. What used to be a beloved series of games has now turned into a burning dumpster fire. So what exactly happened? Let's dive into it. Let's begin with the era that many fans refer to as the Golden Age. Most fans agree that the golden age of NASCAR video games began with EA Sports' first title, NASCAR Thunder 2002. Released in 2001. I know, it's confusing, EA Sports just does this, keep a mental note for the rest of the section. This was not only the first NASCAR game with a fully fleshed out career mode, but also the first one capable of rendering full 43 car fields, and all 23 NASCAR Cup Series tracks. While the game is not perfect by any means, it's a more than solid foundation that EA would build upon for years to come. But EA weren't the only developers making NASCAR titles. NASCAR Heat 2002, also released in 2001, so it's not just an EA Sports thing I guess, was developed by Monster Games. It's a bit of a strange case though, this game does not include all the Cup Series tracks as EA's game did, and depending on which console you're playing on, the field sizes would change as well. The Xbox version could still do 43 car fields like EA, but the PlayStation 2 version wasn't powerful enough and thus had to be capped at 24 drivers per race. Meanwhile, Papyrus was busy working on NASCAR Racing 2002, hot off the heels of their previous PC game, NASCAR Racing 4. And hey, guess what? This one actually came out in 2002. And it probably would have been remembered as one of the best NASCAR games of the era, if not for Papyrus upping their own game the following year with NR 2003. But before we go that far, we have to discuss the other major game of 2002, Dirt to Daytona by Monster Games. This game offered a drastically different career mode to the one found in the EA Sports titles. While NASCAR Thunder 2003 on EA's side fleshed out the aspect of owning and upgrading a Winston Cup Series race team, Monster took a different approach, the one of the average contracted driver. Instead of starting as a backmarker and improving your equipment until you're a championship contender, here you start as a dirt racing novice who then moves to modifieds, followed by the Truck Series, and finally, the Cup Series. While this game still lacked all the licensed tracks that EA managed to get their hands on, it offered something new that had never been seen before. And many players prefer this method of working your way up in semi-competitive equipment to the NASCAR Thunder career mode where you basically played Furniture Row Simulator for a few seasons. The success of Dirt to Daytona would elevate the rivalry between these game studios to new heights, and with that, their games would get even better. On that note, Papyrus would release the aforementioned NR 2003, one of the most beloved NASCAR games of all time. Not only is it a surprisingly good simulation title for its time, but it's also incredibly easy to mod, leading to a community of avid online racers that still use it to this day, more than 20 years later. With that, it should come as no surprise that this is still the highest rated NASCAR title on Metacritic. But if you're looking for a fun, solid, single-player game, then look no further than NASCAR Thunder 2004. Being released on consoles, this game reached a much wider audience than NR 2003 at the time of its release, and is probably responsible for many NASCAR fans we have today. While the game stuck to the same Winston Cup team motor career that 2002 and 2003 offered, it introduced loads of new features as well, including lightning challenges where you recreate or change situations from real life, thunder plates where you can unlock bonus content for completing various challenges, fantasy tracks adding even more content to EA's already huge library, and my personal favorite feature, allies and rivals. If you draft with other drivers and pass them cleanly, they'll become more friendly and return the favor. But if you drive dirty enough times, they might just get sick of your crap and pile drive you into the wall Matt Kenseth style. This was also the first console title to introduce online play, and while it didn't stick around like NR 2003, it was a decent enough success for its time. But perhaps the monumental success of NASCAR Thunder 2004 is ultimately what led to the fall, because soon afterward, NASCAR would grant their exclusive license to EA Sports, a move that at the time seemed like it couldn't go wrong. But only a few short years later, this would ultimately prove to be the beginning of the end. NASCAR 2005 Chase for the Cup would be the first game released under the exclusive license, and for the most part, the game is a fantastic follow-up to 2004. This game adopts Dirt to Daytona's approach of working your way up through the lower series to become a Cup Series driver. Modifieds, then trucks, then Xfinity, or Nationwide, or Bush, but we can't call it that because we have to sell this game to kids, so it's the National Series now, and finally, the Cup Series. It also expanded on ideas like the rivalry system from 2004, adding the ability to become a hero or villain, a charismatic agent under the totally real name of Ace Moneymaker, the ability to sign autographs, and even fight other drivers in the garage. This might be the most authentic NASCAR game ever made, though there are a few glaring omissions. Notably, Pocono Raceway and Jeremy Mayfield are both excluded due to licensing issues. Apparently Mayfield was supposed to be the cover driver, but when EA switched to Harvick, Mayfield wanted out of the game entirely. The game also lacks tire wear for AI, but not for the player, so it's considerably harder than most NASCAR games. And with the contract portion of the game taking up most of the career mode, when you do become a race team owner, that part of the game is significantly shallower compared to Thunder 2004. But small quirks aside, most would agree this is still a top-tier NASCAR game, with great features, realistic AI, and driving physics that make it feel like a perfect hybrid between arcade and simulation. With EA now controlling the exclusive NASCAR license, that meant Papyrus could no longer create sim games for PC. EA would try their hand just once with NASCAR Sim Racing. Yes, that's literally the title of the game, but this would ultimately prove to be the last PC sim game for quite some time. Up next is NASCAR 06 Total Team Control, which for the most part is a reskin of 2005, but with one major feature added. The ability to control your team, as the title clearly states. This meant you could also hire teammates if you became a team owner and switch them mid-race to improve your team's overall standing. Not gonna lie, it's a pretty fun gimmick. But that's virtually all that's new here, and it would sadly remove some cool features like the trophy room and a majority of the Thunder plates as well. The game also is notably much more arcade feeling than sim, which rubs some hardcore fans the wrong way. The car just doesn't drive with the same realism that 2004 and 2005 offered, and as a whole, it's just a bit too easy. And 2007 is virtually the same game. They couldn't even come up with a snazzy subtitle to advertise any new features because, well, there are none. But no biggie, right? EA is just working on their next big game for the new Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3 consoles. So who cares if this game is exactly the same? The next one is surely going to knock our socks off, right? And knock our socks off it did. But not in a good way. If NASCAR 06 and 07 were considered a slight decline down the hill, then NASCAR 08 is the sharpest cliff imaginable. The game's graphics look good, and that's the end of my compliments. The game is awful to drive. The slightest overcorrection and your car is heading straight for the fence. I consider myself a pretty decent NASCAR gamer, and even I can't turn a single clean lap at most of the tracks in this game. It's horrendous. EA also didn't bother to get the manufacturer licenses for the car tomorrow in this game, which is extremely strange considering the Gen 4 cars have all their branding, and by NASCAR 09, none of the cars would be branded at all. That should tell you about how much EA cares at this point. Ironically, the PS2 version, which just reuses the same engine as the previous two titles, is considered the definitive version of this game, just because of how bad the new console versions were. NASCAR 09 would then be released as EA's final entry in the NASCAR simulation series before dropping the license due to declining sales. I wonder why. Single-player wise, this game is nothing special. It's pretty much a watered-down version of the same career mode we've seen for the last 4 NASCAR games, with no real new features to speak of. But hey, at least the car is drivable again. That part's kind of important, don't you think? Pretty much all this game is remembered for was its online mode, which was certainly the best that any NASCAR console had seen at the time. But beyond that, it's just okay. EA's true last title for NASCAR, though, would be a Mario Kart clone released in the Nintendo Wii titled NASCAR Kart Racing. To sum it up nice and sweetly, it's fun enough, but most people are probably gonna stick with Mario Kart for the long haul. After a few years with no sim-based games, Technics would pick up the NASCAR license and release NASCAR the Game 2011. Surprisingly, in the year 2011. Pretty much all this game is remembered for was its unbearable amount of glitches and its severely stripped down career mode compared to the EA games. I'm pretty sure you couldn't even make your own driver in this game. You had to race as Jeff Gordon or Tony Stewart or whoever. Like, come on, that's just sad. Some more arcade-style games like NASCAR Unleashed and Days of Thunder would be released in this time frame, but they didn't really excite anybody. Technics would then release their second title, NASCAR the Game Inside Line, in 2012. And it's a surprisingly solid step up from 2011. The graphics are much improved, a paint booth gets added for custom cars, online is much better, and the career is decent enough. The only major shortcoming was that it was still riddled with bugs at release, but to their credit, a lot of these got cleaned up over time, and the game actually boasts a decent Metacritic rating now. While the AI needed quite a bit of work, the driving physics and tire wear model are about as good as a console NASCAR game can get. For 2013, Technics would opt to merely port Inside Line to PCs, and that would be the end of it. NASCAR 14 would be the last true Technics game, and it was a decent upgrade from Inside Line despite being relatively the same game in most aspects. NASCAR 15 would then be a copy and paste released by Duesenberry Martin Racing, and essentially served as a placeholder until the 2016 game could be released. And oh boy, take cover because a nuke must have gone off and wiped out any previous knowledge of NASCAR game development. NASCAR Heat Evolution is widely regarded as one of the worst NASCAR games ever made. And that is a low, low bar. From rampant glitches to horrible physics to graphics and sound that would rival a game released in the 1990s, this game had nothing going for it. And as the first game released on 8th generation consoles, it was a huge disappointment. But as Monster Games re-entered the scene for the first time in over a decade, the Heat series would slowly improve over time. The second entry would finally bring the Trucks and Xfinity series back to consoles for the first time since 2008. Heat 3 would go a step further with a fictional dirt racing series similar to Dirt to Daytona, and Heat 4 would finally give us a driving model that was at least somewhat acceptable to fans. But everything changed when Motorsport Games attacked. While NASCAR Heat 5 was essentially released as another placeholder game, many anxiously awaited MSG's first original NASCAR title. With the game moving from the Unity engine to the Unreal engine and a big budget developer finally taking over, it looked like NASCAR 21 Ignition was finally going to be the return to form that we all hoped for. And you can probably imagine what happened next. Everything that could have possibly went wrong. The driving model is once again terrible. Making slight contact with other cars sends you Ryan Priesting through the infield more often than not. Cautions are broken. Pit stops are broken. AI are broken. Heck, even the pace car is broken. That's genuinely kind of impressive. The only accomplishment this game has is making people appreciate NASCAR Heat 5 more in retrospect, which is probably why the game has been reskinned and ported to new consoles twice in the last 3 years. And up next on the horizon we have NASCAR Arcade Rush, which, while it's not the big sim release we're all waiting for, it should be something to at least stimulate us for a bit. If you want to see some coverage on it soon, then be sure to subscribe to the Daily Downforce here on YouTube. As far as console sim games go though, the story basically ends there. NASCAR 23 would ultimately end up being cancelled by MSG amid their many financial issues among other problems, and at the moment the future of NASCAR console gaming looks uncertain. And that is what happened to NASCAR video games. If you enjoyed this video, then be sure to leave a like, subscribe for more videos just like this one, and check out dailydownforce.com for more great NASCAR content.